So today we have a really exciting panel discussion, Women in IT Consulting. And here is the lineup as advertised. We have to apologise on behalf of Andrea. She can't join us. She's just gone down with COVID after avoiding it for 2 years. So our thoughts are with Andrea. She would have been chairing this session. Instead of Andrea, we have got the chair of the Consultancy Specialist Group stepping in as the chair of the panel discussion. So welcome Antonio, whose photograph isn't on screen therefore. And Antonio, if you want to take it from there, I will turn myself off, I think.
Thank you very much, Simon. Thank you. So yeah, Andrea has not been able to join us today. She sent us her apologies, and we send her best wishes to a prompt recovery. We have 3 tremendous women between us, and they're going to give a couple of minutes to each of them to introduce themselves. We can use the same alphabetic order that we have. I think. Oh no, it's not alphabetic. The same order that we have already in the panel. So I'm just going to give the word first to Joe.
Thanks, Antonio. Hi, everyone. It's lovely to be here. Yeah, so my name's Joe Stansfield. I'm actually a relatively new consultant. I've only been consulting for about the last year, maybe a year and a half. Set up my own consultancy, which is a social enterprise specialising in diversity and inclusion for tech and engineering firms. So my background is actually as a techie. So I've been in software roles, making industrial software for probably the previous 20 years, but had a bit of a pivot. Decided to retrain and have focused my attention out of the human sides, and lots of transformation work involved as a result of that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Rebecca?
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for having me this evening. I always enjoy my sessions with the Consultancy Specialist Group. So my name is Rebecca George, and I've spent 40 years in the digital space, 20 years with IBM, and 15 years with Deloitte. For the last 20 years, I've been working with the public sector, and I expect I'll come back to talking a bit more about that later on. And I've been in and out of the consultancy world really since I started work. As you probably saw, I'm the immediate past president of the BCS, the Chartered Institute of IT, and I retired during COVID. So I have an interesting kind of dynamic that I was working from home, and then I was retired from home, and then I got a role with the Department for Education, which I'm doing now.
Thank you. Kate, you are the next one. Thank you very much.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kate Spalding. I'm a career consultant. I went into consulting straight from uni into KPMG. I then moved on to Atos. It was a big digital organization with a consultancy arm to it, so a completely different experience, and spent about 20 years on the digital side within that. And then recently I then left and joined a small organization, a small management consultancy again, with big aspirations around the data space. And I've recently, literally just in the last week, decided to take a short career break for personal reasons. So I'm currently out of the market, but we're coming back into work in September sometime. So that's me.
Thank you. Thank you, Kate. Roberta?
Evening, everyone. And I guess my history is a bit of a conglomeration of those that we've heard before. So I'm American. I've lived in the UK for 30 years. Started in, as Rebecca said, in the health sector, but in the US. So did my first 7 years of work in the US working in health IT. Which then brought me to the UK to work in the NHS. And I carried on doing that for a while, but partway through that experience, I had the great opportunity to work in much broader programs that were looking at leveraging technology for wider commercial products than what was happening within my small world. So I then spent quite a lot of time and continue to work around merger and acquisitions. So that is really my current focus. My my bio says that I've spent the last couple of years as head of people for PwC Consulting. I do that alongside my client work. But that being said, I've actually now stepped out of that role in order to pick up our global leadership around our deal operations business, which obviously has a very heavy tech and digital element. So that's a new role. It's a post-COVID world where, you know, we've got together as a leadership team for the first time 2 weeks ago. And I'm sure we'll come back and talk a bit more about that. But that is a little bit about me. I have grown up as a consultant my entire life. I have had my children as a consultant and come back into work, so maybe something also to talk about later. You know, currently live outside London, 2 dogs, 2 kids, husband. That's me.
Thank you very much, Roberta. Well, we have a set of curated questions for today. We're going to ask to a few of our, each question to a few of our panelists, and then we will open up the room for additional questions for the public. The first question, I mean, we are talking, we have already one woman down because of COVID, and we have this life that we are coming back after all the disruptions that we have had with COVID, where we can see that working from home is one reality. So I'm going to start with Joe. So Joe, what is your view regarding post-COVID era in terms of working from home?
Yeah, I mean, for me, working from home is the way that I've done inclusioneering from the start. So inclusioneering was a business that started during COVID when working from home was the only way that it worked. And actually for me, that's been a real enabler for the business, because it means I've had a client in India, I've got clients in the northeast of the country, I'm in the southeast, and things that just wouldn't have been possible actually physically to have got between has actually been very achievable when it's from home. And, you know, the client's expectation is actually you can do that from home. It's completely conceivable that we can do all of the work together remotely, just like this. So actually, you know, COVID has really helped me to get established actually from this remote way of working and being able to geographically spread much more thinly than, you know, physically is obviously possible. That said, actually, I'm enjoying the post-COVID world now when I can actually make visits and go and see people and see what their workplaces are like. So, you know, I mentioned I tend to work in the industrial kind of world. So as they're going through transformation for digital kind of aspects, actually, they're often asking me to get involved in the people aspects alongside that. So the places I go visit are like a cement works, which was brilliant. It was just the most exciting thing, you know, that I've done in years, to be honest, to go and visit a cement works a few weeks back and actually physically be somewhere and with people again. So, you know, I'm enjoying the hybrid, but yeah, certainly being remote has been what's enabled me to get started and to find the clients that I actually have.
Thank you. Roberta, I want to pass the question to you. And also I would like to add a little bit of, we have to work from home. So I probably would like to hear a little bit more also about, for you, you are married, you have 2 kids, 2 dogs. So also working from home, how is juggling life and working from home? Did you being a consultant?
Yeah, so I think that there's a number of things going on here. The first thing is that because we've all been forced to work from home for quite a long time, as people emerge from the pandemic, and it's different in different parts of the world, but just taking our own context here in the UK for the moment, I think we're seeing a real pendulum swing. And I think that the world is not going to normalize into whatever the future is going to look like for a while as people settle in, because what we're trying to do in PwC is a hybrid model. So we're asking our people to do 2 to 3 days a week, co-located with either their clients or their colleagues. So a lot of our people spend a lot of time out at client side, or if the client sites aren't available to us yet, quite a lot of clients aren't going back yet. Then they come into the office, and then 2 days on average. I mean, this is not obviously fixed in stone, but that's the general kind of trend that we're aiming for. But we see every mix out there. We have people who, clients who say we're never going back and we want to work with you 100% virtual. So really consistent with what Joe is saying, it's completely possible to do that. And then, of course, we've all seen the reverse of that, the position that Goldman has taken, where they want everyone back 100%. So I think we as a society don't know the answer to this yet. And what is most exciting about this is that this is not going to be a top-down decision. What has happened in the pandemic, from my experience and from my people role, is that our people have a much stronger view about what they want and how they can work and the flexibility that they need. And what we've really proven is that we can trust people. So the fact that people are not sitting in an office at a desk at a certain number of hours, that does not mean that they're any less productive. In fact, in many cases, they're more productive. So for me, on a day that I'm working from home, it's much, much, much more productive, right? Because I don't have the roughly 3 hours of commute time. And that time I can either redivert into work if I need to, or even better, deploy back to my family and spend some time with my children. And maybe every so often I even walk a dog so that, I'm not the one just completely stuck, framed, on the desk all the time. So I think there's huge benefits from a hybrid model. I would never want to give up the office environment. People can see I'm in an office now. And there is a buzz that you get from working with colleagues. There's creativity that we get from being together. And in my organization, the internal network is really, really important. So if you don't bump into people, you're missing opportunities. So I think in a nutshell, that's my experience. And I just don't think we've got to the bottom of what the real answers are, if we ever will.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Roberta. I'm going to move on from working from home. And I would like to ask the next question, which is, what keeps your customers awake? So I would like to start with Rebecca. She always had a really good views on trends and future trends. So Rebecca, I give the way to you.
Thank you. So the key thing that's keeping, there are a few things keeping my clients awake at night and my old clients. First and foremost, the current context. The current context being what we've just been talking about in terms of post-COVID, but also the current context of the dreadful war in Ukraine, which is causing, a huge amount of concern in all kinds of different ways. And linked to that, the rapid increase of cost of living and inflation. So, I don't think we could have foreseen the pandemic. Maybe we should have done. But now to find ourselves in a war and a rising inflation environment, I think this is makes pressures on business all the more difficult. And then you add to that talent. Every single person I speak to says they can't find all the people they need with the skills that they need to meet their client demands and to meet the demands in the consultancy. Behind that, in a more technical sense, CIOs particularly are still being asked all the time to produce the business case for the technology investments that they want to make. And that is really challenging. It's difficult to do that. Technology changes and evolves all the time. Creating the business case and then getting the buy-in is time consuming and really, really important. And the boards will then hold the CIOs to those investment cases and look for the benefits that they've said that they're going to generate. The last two I'll mention, Agile digital transformation. So let's get the digital transformation. Everything that we do in business now has an element of digital transformation, and let's do that quickly. And then security and everything that goes with it. CIOs are increasingly worried about how they build systems which are not only robust and resilient, but also future-proof. And there are a great many people out there who are just as determined to make sure that systems are not. So that's my couple of thoughts on that, Antonio.
Thank you. Pleasure. The next question, I want to also hear from Kate. What are your views on what does keep your customers awake? What do you think are the main trends?
Yeah, do you know, I was just listening to Rebecca there, and I agree with everything you're saying there. It's a really difficult time for an awful lot of industries, particularly around the security and the situation in Ukraine, in lots of different ways. So what's the cybersecurity impact of all this is the big one, and that's a massive, massive growth area for consulting at the moment, just not enough people with the right skills in that particular area. But recruitment is on the tip of the tongue of every single transformation director I know, actually getting the right capability and how to bring people up to speed, how to bring in the diversity that they need as well to get to the right solutions, and how to make the thing work. And those are all things that consultants are often asked to work with as well. You know, how do you actually get this thing to happen, to move through the stages of transformation? I'd add a couple of things as well. The environmental impact is always there and bubbling away. It's becoming more and more of a requirement on every single organisation, and the problem is nobody really knows how to do it. And there's lots of different ways of doing it and lots of thinking, and our thinking is evolving at the same time. So as we go forward in consulting, we're going to have to meet those demands for those sorts of skills and help our clients think out the box and think creatively about how to get around some of these problems and actually take their organisations forward. And the last one is still around the supply chain, making things more efficient internally for our clients. How do they get from soup to nuts as quickly as they possibly can, with the multitude of different things that they've got to think about that supply chain? That's not only their subcontractors, their actual manufacturing supply chain, and all those things. Getting that as smooth and efficient as possible in a constantly changing environment is a real issue. So it's huge. The number of things companies and organisations have to deal with at the moment is massive. And the awareness of digital and IT is there, and people are still not quite getting it right in every single way. So there's a lot of upskilling that's required there, and a lot of thought that needs to go into the digital transformation agenda as we go forward.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Kate. Now we have talked a little bit about the actuality, what is the current situation in the world after COVID. We have talked about trends. Now we are in a forum about consulting. So the next question that I want to ask is what have attracted you coming to consultancy? Not everybody have the thought of joining consultancy when they are studying their degrees. Consultancy normally is a career path that you consider after you have already been in the business, well, in the work market for a while. So I'm going to start with that question. So I'm going to start with Joe. Joe, can you tell us a little bit more about your career path and what attracts you out of consultancy?
Yeah, and it's certainly, as I said, something I've done fairly recently, quite far through my career that I've really made this change. So I spent, a good 20 years working as an employee, but I think I've always been the sort of person who has a bit of a side hustle going on. I've always had, some interests that I've brought in from outside into the work as well. And over time, I've come to realize I'm very much a generalist. I enjoy working broadly, and I enjoy being able to work with a lot of different scenarios and different people. So as I've gone through my career, what's really motivated my change has actually been the diversity and inclusion aspects of it. So, being a software engineer and a product manager within industrial software, I'm sure you can all imagine is, fairly male dominated, and something, that obviously occurred to me. I was one of not very many people doing what I did. And over time, that's just kind of grown from a curiosity of, oh, why is that, to, well, what can we actually do about it then? So that thought is really what got me to retrain. I took a master's degree in organizational psychology. And actually, when I was taking that, I reduced my hours to be working part-time and flexibly. And so I was employee half-time, study half-time, and, doing a bit of my own other stuff part-time as well. And, I found when I finished the master's degree, I just really enjoyed the variety that I had from it and the flexibility that came from that as well. And I wanted to make use of the studies to be a broader impact than just, the single firm that I've been working with. I wanted to make use of that to help our industry rather than, an individual organisation. So that was really what motivated me to make the change. I have to say it's been, you know, a lot of learning beyond just deciding, right, I'm going to do it. You know, big learning curve, actually getting started to work out, well, I know the topic, but how do I actually package myself up as a consultant and actually provide an attractive proposition that, you know, people actually want to make use of my services and, you know, bring me in as a consultant. So, you know, the switch has been interesting, you know, going from being an employee and, you know, a student, I guess, in the business psychology, and knowing the topic domain is only really a part of being a consultant. That I think only doing it is, you know, when I've really truly appreciated, you know, part of that journey that I've had to go through to make the change.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Joe.
Okay.
I'm going to pass the question to Kate, and also if you can give us any advice, considering we have a number of people coming today from that are still a student. So I don't know if you have any advice also to provide.
Yeah, I was going to build on what Joe said. I mean, I think the thing that attracted me to consultancy in the first place is just the sheer breadth of things that you get involved in. I have absolutely amazed myself in my ever so long career as the number of things. I started off as a project management consultant, and I ended up the head of Northern Europe. How did that happen? You know, and you just get job after job after job. Not all of them are the most exciting jobs in the world. Let's be clear about that. But some of them will be the highlights of your life, and I've done some incredible things. So I did a job for a racing stud, for example, and I went to get to go to Ireland and Newmarket to go and see all these fancy horses coming in from all over the world, from Dubai. I've been all over Europe doing lots of different things. I was very privileged to work on the Hillsborough project, which was looking at the truth behind the 1989 disaster, and that hit the headlines in a huge way. I never thought I was going to do any of that. And yet, by just picking up whatever the next project was, thinking about it creatively and moving on and moving it through, I've had some incredible experiences. And I think that's the thing about consulting. You get the problems, you get to solve real problems for your clients. So whatever it is that floats your boat, you will end up in something in that area. And it's just amazing what you can end up doing. So I would always do that. It's really hard work, and you do have to be flexible with your life in order to make it happen. But it is changing dramatically from what it was 20, 30 years ago. And really, the future is going to be really exciting as they really combine the real business problems with the IT and the digital problems, opportunities that we have. It's just a big, exciting place to be, really. That's why I've been in consulting for as long as I have been.
I completely agree with you. It's a really exciting place to be right now, and with all the new technologies and new things and new changes that we are facing in the near future. I'm going to keep moving. I see that we have some questions. I saw that also Rebecca has answered. We're going to have, after we finish with the curated questions, we will move to the open questions from the public. So we will go back to any questions. So feel free if you want to type anything in the chat, and we will come back to that later. We have talked about what is attractive. We have talked about what is going to be what is the current situation. I think now the next question that I want to talk is how do we see the future in terms of diversity and inclusion? I mean, this talk is about consultancy, but also consultancy for women, and we historically we have had challenges, and we would like what will be, how do we see the future? So I'm going to start in this question with Joe, because he has quite a good, strong background in diversity and inclusion. So Joe, over to you.
Yeah, well, I'd like to pick out on a few things that actually everyone else has already talked about a little bit, you know, in terms of the challenges that are keeping their clients awake. And, you know, that coming to things like talent and digital transformation and environment. And actually in all of these things, I see a major role for diversity and inclusion actually being an enabler to do those jobs well. And particularly in, the areas emerging like environmental sustainability, meeting net zero challenges. I think there's a whole new purpose to the work then that it gives to people. And I really see that appealing to a broader demographic than maybe some of the more traditional areas have done. So, in terms of finding, the talent that we need to really be able to resource it, I think these things really go hand in hand. So actually, as we're trying to meet these broader challenges, actually, it's a brilliant opportunity to actually start finding a wider range of people who are actually naturally a bit more attracted into areas where maybe they haven't considered before, as well as a result of these new kind of perspectives and, the purpose that's brought with it. So I'm quite excited to see how all of these things actually come together and evolve together to be able to solve all of these challenges.
Thank you, Joe. And I also have Roberta. Could you comment a little bit on that, on your perspectives as well, please?
Yeah, and I think it is connected a bit to what we were mentioning before about the more flexible ways of working in a post-COVID world, because it opens up opportunities for people who might historically felt excluded from participating in certain industries and certain sectors. Just before we started, we were talking a bit about health, and that it was very common to have a load of women in a room in health. And in my career, I've gone from that to M&A, where it's very often to this day that I'm the only woman around. And I think that you see that big spectrum. But now in a post-pandemic world where more and more things are virtual, that means that you get greater and greater inclusion, or you have the potential to. And I think the risk that we all face is that we squander that dividend, that opportunity that has been presented by this, kind of coming out of our old ways of working and into new ways of working. So I'm very optimistic that that in a current world and in current consultancy, generally industry and consultancy both recognize the importance of diversity. I think the business case, and let's face it, there has been 15 years of people trying to prove the business case, and maybe longer, Rebecca, right? I don't know. It's a long time that we've been trying to prove the business case that diversity matters. And that business case seems to be accepted now, the importance of diversity, not just because it's the right thing and it reflects the communities that we work in, but also we get better answers for our clients. So from a consulting perspective, when your job is to solve problems, you're going to get better answers when you have a mix of opinions and views and perspectives and background. And that's not just gender, of course. So that whole point about inclusion goes very, very wide. And what I hope happens is that the greater flexibility that we have allows greater inclusion, but also that inclusion doesn't mean everyone blends into similar. So I think what's really important is that if you come from a particular ethnic background and the power and the culture that comes with that gets brought into work, because that's been the difficult thing. Is not that people won't work in the industry, they just don't get to be their whole selves. So they come in and they put on like a mask of who they're supposed to be. And what I hope is that we can drop the mask and we can actually have the strength of all the things that people can bring in, of all their different aspects of their lives when they come into work. And that would be, a really exciting thing to look forward to.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Roberta. Rebecca, do you want to say any last words on this same topic?
Yeah, I do. I thought that was really powerful, Roberta, and I agree with everything you say. And I also think it's really important that everybody works at diversity and inclusion, all aspects of it, all time. Over the course of my career, I've seen so many different initiatives, so many short-term, fragmented projects where the funding stops, or there's not enough collaboration. Or maybe it's women trying to do something just for women, and that doesn't work. Everybody has to be on the diversity and inclusion agenda the whole time. The other thing I think is really important, has always been important to me, is to understand how different people work in the workplace and embrace and celebrate that. And the area that I'm most familiar with is women. And women do work differently from men, typically, in the workplace. They tend not to be as confident in job interviews. They tend not to network as much as the men. And if you work in an environment where networking is important, you might miss out. And women tend, and there's always exceptions to the rule, but they tend not to be great at negotiating their salaries and feel uncomfortable jumping up and down and asking for pay rises. And I personally think it's important that everybody understands the differences in the ways that different people work and celebrate and support them to be as productive and successful as they can possibly be.
I do really like, I'm going to get with that last phrase that you said of celebrate the difference that we all have, the individualities. I'm going to pass to the last round. So I'm just going to ask to each of the panelists that we have today, one of our panelists, what are your views? What you think we can do to have more women in senior consultant roles? So I'm going to start with the same order that I had at the beginning. If I remember right, I think was first Joe, then Rebecca, then Kate, and then Roberta.
It's always me first. I want to hear other people before me, but I'll go. So, what I see a lot of is, some of these dynamics that Rebecca has talked about, where, women don't necessarily have that level of inclusion, but it's not just women, actually, it's people from all minority backgrounds. And are we actually recognizing and valuing and helping people to progress in the same way? And when I've been looking into tech teams, particularly, what you see is that, some of those barriers affect people's motivations, how they feel about it. Do I put myself forward to go for it? But it also affects how the team expects things of each other as well. So actually, do we expect the women to be putting themselves forwards? And if they do, how do we respond to it? Do we actually give the same kind of evaluation of, women doing something that men do? Do we treat it in the same way? So actually, it's really important within teams to recognize, kind of us as individuals and have that ability to really recognize the value that women bring into the team to help them get the stretching assignments, to help them get the next opportunity that then helps them grow into those more senior roles. Because what we can see in the day-to-day is that doesn't necessarily, just happen. It does take some conscious effort for the team to make sure that, they do see that, this particular perspective that the woman has brought into the team is equally valuable to the perspective that her colleagues may be bringing. And actually it's necessary to help grow, the work that the team is doing to the same extent, to a greater extent. And so therefore, she can then get those opportunities to keep progressing and to make it to those more senior levels.
Thank you. I'm going to go next with you, Rebecca.
So when I retired from Deloitte last year, I was a managing partner, and 3% of the managing partners in the part of the company I was in, Deloitte North South Europe, 25 countries, 3% were women. And that's after a lot of work to increase the number of women in senior roles in the consultancy. I would say a couple of things. I would say you have to be good. I mean, everybody who's going to get to the top of a large organisation like Deloitte is going to have to be good, have to be good at what they do. But you also do have to have stakeholders and supporters, and in my case, some amazing mentors and coaches along the way, many of whom were men. And I think the other thing that you probably have to have, and Joe, you sort of touched on this, is you actually have to do some stuff on purpose. You don't have to leave it to chance. Many years ago, when I was still a relatively junior partner, the then CEO at Deloitte created a board role that was only for women. And it caused uproar at the time. It caused absolute uproar. Now, move forward 10 years, nobody could remember. Nobody knew. Nobody actually cared that that particular role had only been created in order to get more women onto the board. So sometimes you need a brave, innovative man to make a bold action to move the agenda forward. And then you need to let time move on and people will forget and more women will be in the role and then they'll do a brilliant job. And then you become more of a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Amazing, amazing story and amazing anecdote. Thank you, Rebecca.
So I think really good points, Joe and Rebecca. Looking at the figures across the consulting industry, it's about half and half entering the industry in terms of gender balance, but at the senior levels across all firms, large and small, it's about 21% in senior partner positions. So we've got a long way to go and people are falling out along the way. And I think I would agree, sponsorship in particularly, over and above mentoring, getting a senior man to sponsor you and to say things on your behalf is really valuable. And I think men have a huge part to play in this point. And I think Rebecca was saying, that you've got to be good to get to the top. All of the men at the top are actually very good at their job, and they will value the diversity that we bring, and that not just women, all forms of diversity, and that's going to be more commonplace now. So sponsorship really important. Having role models at the top of the organisation, seeing women. I remember seeing a very senior woman who'd won an award and was lauded all over the place when I first started. I thought, oh, I want to be like her. It was great because it was a little bit more something I could relate to. But the last thing that I would say from personal experience is you've got to want to do it. Right? I wanted to be a consultancy partner. I just thought it was the bee's knees right from the very beginning. And that's what I wanted to do. I have 4 children and I'm a widow and I've brought the kids up by myself. If I can do it, working part-time for most of that, frankly, anybody can. So, don't ever say, I can't do this because I'm a woman. Please never say that. You can go as far as you want to and you can do whatever you want. You might have to give up some other things. And if you don't want to leave your children with your mother, a childminder or a nanny, then you might find that really difficult. But I was happy to do that. And my daughter said to me yesterday, she's a vet now, and she came out and I said, oh, I'm on this career break, Laura. What do you think? Mummy's going to be at home all the time to, be there for you. And she went, yeah, she's 27, right? Okay. That's quite good, actually, because you can look after the dogs for me. But I'm glad you didn't do that when I was younger. So, I think we've got to set the expectation that if you want to do this, you can. And please always believe that you can, is all I would leave you with.
Another very powerful anecdote. Thank you, Kate. Roberta, you are at least not the last, but not least.
Well, I think that's right. I do think that it's helpful just to round out, because all of these points are powerful and important and factor into the things that we can do and that individuals can do for themselves. I guess if I had to summarize what I've seen in my career, and in the same moment that Kate was seeing role models, the very few women who were in senior positions at that time, those women kind of had to be more male than the men. And it was very easy to find role models of these women who were adopting ways of working that were very kind of prototypically male. So that was like the generation above me. And then in my generation, I think what we tried to do more, and I'll speak for myself, but it'd be interesting to hear what others think, but we more, were fitting in. We were working as well as the men, we were as good as the men, but we were fitting in. And what I've seen in the younger women coming through is they want to be who they are, and they're not willing to be fixed. It's like, don't train me to have more confidence. I have the confidence I have, and that should be what's good enough. And I was really stunned. That comment was actually made to me, not in the context of gender, but in the context of race. So one of my Black female partners said to me, don't try to teach women from an ethnic minority background how to be fixed, because there's nothing wrong with them. They're not broken. We've got to recognize what they bring in their own cultural context and how we can support them to bring the best of that into our workplace. And I just thought that was a really powerful statement that she made to me. And I've obviously taken it very much to heart, because I do think that the world has moved on. Younger women coming into the workplace have completely different experience. I have no idea what I'm going to advise my 16-year-old. I'm not sure. Her world is such a completely different world. What I would say, and this is something that speaks, I think, very much to my own experience, is thinking about having a family is a really important thing to work through in terms of timing. And again, in my generation, there were many, many, many women going through IVF processes all at the same time and absolutely not talking about it. No support for each other, no support from organizations, and having, quote unquote, left it too late. So I was 40 when my first was born. I was one of those who left it very, very late. And I feel very, very lucky that I do have 2 children, but I'm exhausted, right? Because I've got an 11-year-old boy and I'm at like a couple of years away from retirement. So there is something that I would say about thinking very seriously about what Kate said. You can balance these things and you don't have to make the trade-offs that I think a whole generation of women did make those trade-offs. And you know, I think we've all learned to see another day from it, but it's not easy. You do have to really want these things.
Thank you. Really powerful comments as well. With that, I'm going to give pass to some of the comments that we have from the public. Rebecca has already answered, but I would like to give the chance to Vicky Talon to speak herself. Maybe, I don't know if you can turn your camera on and maybe you can ask the question or the comment yourself. Thank you, Vicky.
Yes, thank you. Well, I think Rebecca's answered it. I think I possibly misunderstood what Rebecca was saying. I do think, though, that we're still living in a world where IT is seen as this kind of amazing thing that's going to happen and people have to justify it. Whereas if you saw it as part of your building or, you know, just, you know, major part of your infrastructure, I still think we're away from that. And people are still talking about doing digital transformation. And actually, you should be just doing it. You know, you should be changing it. It should be part of your continuous improvement. So that was my point around that.
Thank you. Rebecca, you already answered, but I don't know if you want to add anything else to what have already been said.
So I mean, I absolutely agree that we don't do any kind of business today that doesn't have an element of digital in it or technical transformation of some kind. But in my experience, anything you want to do in your business that requires a lot of spend, regardless of whether it's revenue or capital, you have to do a business case for it. And that's just as true for IT as it would be for leasing a new building or, you know, kind of anything else that you want to do that's going to be expensive. And that was really the point that I was making. I think in my world, which is always public sector, because I only work with public sector clients, I think the bureaucracy is possibly more than it is in some private sector organisations. And I do know CIOs and other people, by the way, in the public sector who do spend an awful lot of time on the paperwork. And I sometimes think it would be good if they were able to move on from that and get on with the doing. But that is perhaps a public sector thing.
Thank you. Kate, do you want to add something at the top of this?
Yeah, I was just thinking, building on what Rebecca and Vicky have said, I think the big difference here is if rather than choosing a property, which is a big project that can be done once, digital and IT is always evolving. The pace of the new technologies coming through is immense, and the business just aren't still not able to cope with it. They're used to making a change and having it done once, and this idea of this continual improvement and having to constantly do it is just not in everybody's psyche yet. And I was absolutely flabbergasted to hear a very senior person in government the other day say, yeah, we're going to have to start taking notice of digital. I'm just thinking, where have you been? So it's still there that they think it's going to be fixed, and this project is going to fix the problem. And they haven't got into this idea that it's just a continual evolution, and that their business or their organisation or their purpose has got to continually evolve as well. I mean, obviously, the public sector's got to react to Ukraine and Brexit and the environment as much as any other organisation, and it's a it's still an ever-changing environment of what they are supposed to be doing, because it's really hard at the moment. And business doesn't move that quickly, and that's what we've got to crack and get business and digital working a little bit more in harmony with each other. I really like the answer, and I really like the point that it's not about solving a problem, it's a continuous effort, it's something evolving. I'm going to move to the next comment. We have Michaela. Michaela, do you want to turn your camera and tell us your comment or question?
Oh, hello. Sorry, is this the comment earlier about the mentoring?
So
you're meaning, or
I think you have one comment that you were commenting on, that you align with what Roberta was saying regarding coaches and mentors.
Oh, right. Okay. Hello. So yes, one of the regrets I think I always have is that growing up, and again, this might be a cultural thing in terms of, not having those people around me to let me know that these things were around. The concept of having like a mentor or a coach who can sort of open your eyes to the things that are out there. And what Kate was saying as well about having somebody who is there that looks like you, that you can then see and aspire to. I think those are really, really important, powerful things. And I think people nowadays get a lot more opportunity, I think. So it's nice to see if that's changing.
Thank you. Roberta, do you want to add anything else on top of?
I was only going to reference that quote from Marilyn Albright, which is, "There's a special place in hell that's reserved for women who don't help other women." In my experience, I've never met a woman who doesn't want to help other women. And actually, the earlier in your career that you can reach out to people in your network, and if you haven't started your career yet, in your university professors network or your parents' friends network, to ask about the world of work and what it's like and what's out there, the earlier you do it, the better. In my experience, people only want to help.
Okay. Something as well. One thing that I found really helpful actually in organisations, admittedly, in my career as a software developer and product manager rather than in consulting roles, has been kind of the employee groups where women come together, especially when you're in an environment where there just aren't actually that many women. Like Rebecca's saying, actually reaching out and finding them makes a massive difference. And so for me, it was quite an eye-opening moment, actually, when I went on a leadership development course that was only for women. And I'd never, at that point, had any leaders in my entire management chain be a woman. It's like I literally knew what 0 women leaders were like. So I was quite curious going on it to know, am I actually going to find it different? Is it going to be different actually seeing women, leaders? How am I going to find that? And it kind of reminded me of a point earlier in my career when, I'd been considering my kind of next career move with my boss at the time. And he said, well, who in the organisation do you see yourself becoming like? And I kind of thought about it. And no one. I don't see that at all. But, finding myself in this environment with, some women leaders actually was really eye-opening, because you do find actually you can put yourselves in their shoes that bit easier. And actually, suddenly some of the things that you can see them doing, actually, I could imagine, actually, I can do it like that. And I can see how that works for them. And actually, maybe that would work. So certainly in my own personal experience, it was a really powerful thing, actually, to start finding that network of women, and women who are that bit further ahead, who you could actually understand a bit more about how do they go about doing things, how does it work for them, could I try that out, what happens if I do this. And it was a great kind of eye-opening moment, quite pivotal, I think, to actually start getting me onto a more senior path.
Really nice comment. I want to give the word also to Kate.
Hi, yeah. So interestingly, I did a bit of research and looked out about whether the sort of female characteristics of leadership were becoming more important or not. And in the small, non-statistically relevant survey that I did, it was about half and half in terms of what people thought were the important things about leadership. So then I looked at the Harvard Business Review, and they define in Harvard 19 characteristics of leadership, and in all but 3 of them, women outshine men. And I can't remember what the 3 are actually, but one of them was strategic thinking. So men were generally expected to be better, but a lot of those scores were like 51, 49, that kind of thing. So, but in some of the things around empathy and leadership, women outshone men by 10, 20%. And I think that's something to bear in mind. And that was a review that was marked by peers, subordinates, and seniors as well. So it was an all-round thing. The second piece of information, which I got from a book that I read recently, was, and you notice I put my hand up before I did this, men interrupt women and women give way 50% more times than the other way around. But also, women interrupt women more. So I was very, very careful not to interrupt Jo. So actually, that's really interesting. So women are more likely to just give way. And that doesn't mean you should ride roughshod every meeting that you go to from now on, but be aware of it and understand that actually there is a place and a time to really hold your own and make sure that you are actually heard.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we live in a world where we are interrupted quite more frequently than we would like. But yeah. I see some comments from Elizabeth. Elizabeth, do you like, I mean, I saw that first comment on the 50%, and I think it links very well with what Kate was saying before. Do you want to mention, don't you come around and speak up?
Certainly, hello.
Hello.
So I've had to move countries for personal reasons. So instead of starting the new role doing T-levels, which I was really looking forward to, I'm now in Scotland teaching computing. And so this work that's gone in to make more than 50% of the advanced higher class female has actually been done by the 3 men who were in the department before. So it's really excellent to see that they've been able to do that and inspire these girls to keep going. The whole class is probably going to get an A. The whole class is predicted A's at higher and at advanced higher, and that is amazing for just an ordinary school in a poor town in Scotland. But what I want to do next, always providing I actually get the job, is to find a range of local role models I can invite into school to help with trying to give people an idea of what's out there, what could they do, what can I do, and it won't just be women, and it won't just, I mean, I would like a whole range of role models is really the basic thing, because I think if we can increase the diversity of the children, it's one of the main reasons I switched from software development to teaching, then we can increase the diversity of the higher ups. Eventually, I realise it's a long, slow process. Thank you.
I agree with the comment of the role models. We lack of role models, and we lack of role models, for example, of successful women. We have today 4 really good examples about our panelists. So yeah, who wants to go? Who would like to make a mention on this comment?
I don't mind saying something, because I actually agree. I think that if we want to affect change, we have to start with society. And I think, the expectations, they start in school. And I'm not an educationalist, so I can't really speak for your industry, Elizabeth. But, I do remember, seeing an experiment, a boy and a girl of about 8 being given the same task, and the girl was given less money than the boy. And it was outrage, outrage at 8 years old, because that's not fair. And we seem to lose that somewhere along the line. It's a thing we do need to make sure we engender. So whether it be digital or IT skills early on, or just that expectation in life. And I think it goes for boys as well as girls, because unless as many men are as happy to take on some of the sort of home duties as women are, then that's never going to work. And I think it is really hard. My mum still doesn't understand why I don't give up work. You know, she just doesn't get it at all. You know, and it's just a generational thing. My kids don't expect me to, but I don't know what will happen in the next generation. Hopefully it will be even more equal, because nobody teaches boys that they're going to give up work as soon as they have children. So
It's terrible.
yeah, I mean, and lots and lots and lots of young men want to be at least a more active parent, if not full-time at home.
Yeah. No, I think it's terrible that high amount of women that stop their career just because they become a mother.
Yeah, and it's not just being a mother, it's caring of elderly people, just caring of the community. It tends to fall on the woman in most cases, and the man is expected to work. So there is a societal thing there, definitely.
Any additional comments? Roberta, do you have any particular view on this?
Well, so I was just thinking through my own experience around it and what might be added. I think that it's the return to work as much as the leaving. So one of the things that we're seeing is an increasing amount of men taking paternity leave and quite substantial pieces of time and juggling that with the mother. So between them, they are taking the time off to be with baby at home, but also both are continuing their career by taking it in turns. And I think that there is a whole policy issue that has to happen. I mean, completely agree with the comments about it's a societal issue. You know, why is it that women get maternity leave and men get a couple of weeks of paternity leave? Why can't they have the same amount of time? And that certainly happens in other countries. So there are some real challenges for what we could do, because one of the big challenges that we experience is supporting women when they come back and making it feel possible for them to be successful in both being a mom and continuing to be successful in their career, and not necessarily making that a trade-off. And I guess that there's a lot of work that needs to be really done there, because the traditional path for a lot of women coming back into work is they basically they step onto a slower road. I think it would be fair to say maybe in a consulting world, they maybe step into an internal role rather than a client-facing role for a while. But they're essentially, the women are choosing to step off a fast track, even though they might have been, from a talent and a skill perspective, they might have been on that fast track. And one of the wonderful things about our society is that it really is in the choice of the women. So one of the reasons I think that we see that Rebecca's pyramid of, you know, so few women at the top is because women have chosen to step off. They've chosen it. And so the question is, how can we make this career really exciting, really lifelong, so that it evolves with you and with your life, and we continue to make it an attractive place for people to spend their entire lives, not just something that you do until you have a baby and then you think, well, that's all just a bit too hard, and you go and do something else.
Thank you, Roberta. Joe, I think you want to make a comment on this.
Yeah, I do. Let's see on my hand. It's just about the women stepping off, and it's such a shame, isn't it? Especially when you're hearing about how Kate has worked part-time through her career. Actually, I've done the same. Actually, I didn't mention it because I realised I tend to keep that quite secretive in a way. You know, I wonder what people are going to think about it if, you know, they know I'm not actually doing a full week worth of work and I'm actually managing to do what I do in just a couple of days sometimes. But actually, as Kate has shown, it can work. You can actually have a very successful career and work into very senior positions and make a big impact in the hours that you actually have available. And I think once we start recognizing that more and actually helping people to work flexibly and succeed with their career aspirations, rather than working flexibly and putting them aside for a while, actually we're going to get much further.
Thank you. I'm going to give the word to Kate, but first I just want to make a comment. I see often too many people working really long hours, more than they should, and getting burned. And they think that is working and they're going farther, but they don't. They got burned, and at the end is worse than the long term. So just want to indicate that some people try to work longer hours than they should. And that's not always the best choice on the long run. So what you were saying of, if you work your hours, the hours that you should be actually working, you're probably going to be, and you dedicate the time that you have to dedicate to your family and any other commitment that brings you, makes you grow as a person, you're going to feel better with yourself, and you're going to be more comfortable in the job position, and that's going to help you to go further rather than burning yourself in the beginning. And with that, I'm just going to move to Kate. Sorry for the interruption.
That's fine. A couple of things. I found something the other day. It's called TimeWise, and it publishes the top 10 power list of people that work part-time, and it's male and female. And one of the very senior people, and I'm really sorry, I can't remember the name, somebody who managed the vaccine rollout. You know, you couldn't really get a more stressful job, could you? But apparently that person worked for part-time. So let's just cut through this. If you know how to do your job and you can be organised and you can form a team below you, you can do anything you want. So that's the point I wanted to make there. And the other thing is that the people that keep an eye on the hybrid working and the post-pandemic and the nature of work and all that kind of stuff, the popular opinion is that 4-day week is coming for nearly everybody, because there is so much thinking around people want more time at home and want more work-life balance, and you could see that could work really, really well. So maybe the thought for the future is that we have a 4-day week for everybody, and maybe that will be best for everyone.
Yeah, I do that. I like the idea. Thank you. I don't see more questions coming up, so I'm going to give a couple of minutes to each of the panelists to say goodbye.
Vicky's got her hand up.
Rebecca?
No, Vicky's got her hand up.
Oh, I couldn't see it. Sorry about that.
That's
Thank
right.
you.
I just wanted to say a couple of things. First of all, Roberta was my mentor. I joined Roberta's team many years ago. And I kind of wanted to comment, so thank you to Roberta, because she's always been a strong mentor for me. But we have very different careers and different career paths, I think it's fair to say, because I've done lots of other things and come back into the consulting world. And one of the things that I did actually is interior design. And one of the things that I often say to people when I talk to them about interior design is I don't want to put them in a square room and say, what do you want? Because if I put them in a square room, they will design a square room. And so I try and take when I'm designing and I do layouts, I take out all the walls, all the windows, I take everything out so that there is no boundaries. I think what's still a challenge for us as women, working women, is certainly I think amongst my generation, we still have some boundaries about what it means to work. So we still might have, it's 9 to 5, it's 5 days a week, it's this many hours. And I think the younger generation are coming up, they don't have those boundaries. They don't have boundaries around their genders. They don't have boundaries around fluidity of their careers and the portfolio. And I think therefore, they will start to create a new environment that will enable them to grow and create much more equality and parity because they don't have boundaries that perhaps some of us have still got. I know that sometimes I've had younger people say to me, why did you accept that? And I said, because that was the world that I grew up in. You know, that's what I saw. I didn't know any different. We've created for them some room to see something different. We've taken some of those walls and windows out. They can now see a different layout. So they're creating something different. So I think it's really important that we understand it's an evolutionary thing. It's not going to happen overnight, but we need to encourage taking all those boundaries down.
I completely agree. Anyone of the panelists want to say anything? And thank you. I'm sorry, Vicky, I couldn't see your hand.
Well, just to go back to build on a comment that Kate made earlier, which is, basically, I think you're right. And I think the organisations we've all worked for are going to have to change and be flexible and adaptable in ways that they haven't needed to in the past to keep up. And I also agree with the comment that was made earlier that women will choose to walk away and do something different if they can't find the environment in which they can be themselves authentically and successful. And so, we already know that the vast number of new companies set up in the world are set up by women. And I don't think that's an accident. I think that's because they can see a way of creating their own culture in a way that they can't see in more traditional business models. But I think the more traditional business models have to change.
Thank you. Very true. Right. I don't see more comments or questions coming up in the chat, so I'm going to ask again to each of the panelists to give a couple of closure notes, and we will conclude the event today. Joe, we will start again with you.
Always first, thank you. It's been a wonderful discussion. Thanks, very much to all of my fellow panelists. I've really enjoyed hearing from all of you, and I think that's kind of part of the point of all of this, in a way, isn't it? That we learn more from each other. We're better, from learning and supporting each other. And there's some amazing new role models for me now, and seeing the success and the career paths of the fellow panelists. So I hope that we have provided some of that also to participants in the audience, and that there's some valuable points that everyone has made about the way that the world of work is changing post-pandemic, with new generation coming into the workforce, and let's inspire each other and work together to keep changing it.
Thank you. I'm going to move to you, Rebecca.
Thank you. So I believe in that old proverb that a problem shared is a problem halved. And I firmly believe that no single organisation, company or business should have all the skills that are needed in the world to be able to run their business well. And I also believe there's always a place for people to ask for help with really difficult, complex problems that they can't just solve on their own. So that's why I think consultancy is so important. It's a brilliant career. You get to do so many different things. Kate talked really eloquently earlier about changing people's lives and changing the world, and you can do that in consultancy. But I think there's a really important role for consultants to be that additional skill base to help with those really difficult, challenging problems, and then move on. Leave organisations to run themselves better than they were before you came, and go and do the next one for your client. There's nothing like it. It's the best buzz in the world.
Thank you. Kate, I'm going to move to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you everybody for a really interesting discussion, and I hope everybody on the call takes up consulting. I like a challenge, and it does challenge you, and it does stretch you, and it does give you loads of different things to think about in your career. So do it.
Thank you. Roberta?
I might just finish off with a plug for youth. And one of the things that I've really benefited from in the last, maybe year, is a reverse mentor. So my reverse mentor is possibly not 20 yet, or maybe just turned 20. So at least one, if not two generations below, if you will, younger than me. And it is enormously valuable to see the world from a different perspective, to be asked questions, and to be for me to have someone that I can ask those same, my questions to. So if you are a student and you are interested in consulting and you can find your way into reverse mentoring arrangements, they are enormously, enormously valuable for people at this sort of end of their career, or not even at the end, in the middle. So I would encourage people to think about that as well as you're thinking about finding your way into a consulting career, which I wholeheartedly agree. I have had a fabulous, fabulous time in my time as a consultant. I would do it all over again, absolutely, and wouldn't change a thing. So, wish you all very, very well in making those choices. And thank you for taking the time with us tonight. And thank you to all the panelists. It's been lovely, lovely to see people and to hear your experiences.
Indeed. Thank you very much to all the panelists. Thank you, Roberta, Joe, Rebecca, and Kate. And thank you for all the attendees for joining tonight. Thank you again. And I just want to wish you good night. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.